Here's Atlantic staff writer Amanda Mull.
Fashion has long been aimed at size zero women, especially when it comes to luxury. Attitudes about body image have begun to shift in the last few years, and more clothing is being made for people of different sizes and shapes. Fashion designer Christian Siriano has been at the forefront of this fashion movement. Joining me now is Christian Siriano.
How are you?
Hello, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Well, Christian, I wanted to talk a little bit first about the background of your career and how your brand has evolved since you started it. What was the industry's attitude toward body diversity when you started your eponymous brand?
Yeah, I think, gosh, I mean, in the very beginning, when we first, when I really decided that I want to have maybe a curvier model on the runway, I guess what was most interesting is that it wasn't just really available. There weren't a lot of agencies that were supplying models. That wasn't just something that you just didn't happen. So I thought that was very interesting, and I guess that's why I was pretty curious what would happen, what the reaction would be. And I think in the first show that we ever did, which was years ago now, I think the reaction was mixed. I think some people really loved it and loved seeing someone like themselves in the clothes, and I think other people didn't understand because fashion, even though moves very quickly and there's a lot of innovators in fashion, sometimes they can be very stuck in their ways, which is interesting, kind of a contradiction, but now we've learned that I think it really changes people's perception of like our brand and what we can do, and that's kind of the best part.
Right, right. You mentioned it was hard to find models of different sizes when you started out. What was the general reaction of the industry when you started? Because I know that a lot of steps go into putting on a fashion show, from finding fit models to finding investors, people who are willing to sign on to your vision. Was there any resistance because of your interest in body diversity?
I mean, I think there's always like there's always a little pushback whenever you try something different, especially in this business, which is you know really interesting. I think everybody gets worried because it's not the same way that it's been done for so long, or and yeah, there weren't people available. That just wasn't a part of the business that I think the industry was really focused on, which is so interesting because it's such a big part of the business, such a big, I think important role. I think what the average person really, what is their size, what are they buying? So that was really, I was very more curious about that. So I think that everyone on the financial side was excited for a new opportunity, but everybody kind of on the creative side wasn't sure if it was going to work. But I think I knew it was. Yeah.
And of course, in fashion, there are the businesses, and then there are the shoppers. And sometimes those two groups can be at odds about certain ideas or certain emphasis. What was the reaction from shoppers at the same time that the industry was sort of resistant to some of this change?
Yeah, no, it's all about the consumer now. I mean, and I think everybody, after the pandemic, I think every brand, every company, every business really has realized, even more now than ever, that the customer, the consumer, whoever's shopping your brand is the most important person in the room. Who cares about anybody else? I don't care what people are saying about the collection. As long as people are buying it and interested, that's the only way to kind of survive and build and grow. And I think that attention was so important. And I think having extended sizes for all these different types of shapes and people too, not just women's wear, maybe it's men's, maybe it's non-binary, whatever it is. You can't kind of alienate a customer anymore. I think that that's the biggest lesson everyone's kind of realized. But it's the best of both worlds. You get a new customer and you make people feel great. So I don't know why the disconnect happened for so long.
Right, right. How have things changed? Did you start to notice things shifting? Has that change accelerated in the past few years?
Yeah, I think awareness is a really big part of like our culture and what's happening in our world. People are so much more aware, they're so much more in tune. They're so much more savvy now because everything is at their fingertips, you know. And I think when I started my business, there was no social media. The iPhone just came out. This was in 2008. Twitter just launched in 2008. So that's wild to think about. That's when I started my brand. Um, so now thinking about today, I think it's a much more, you know, world where people are, you know, just in tune with what's happening. And I think the person who is maybe a curvier woman she was fed up with not having representation. So I think that's why it had to change. I think representation in general, you kind of can't get away from it anymore, which I love. And it's so fun to watch a big brand suffer and try to figure it out. I love it.
Mhm, mhm. Speaking of representation, you in particular have had enormous success, I think, with celebrity dressing and with dressing celebrities of diverse body types, of diverse gender presentations, of all kinds of different people. What role has that had for you in your business, and also just more broadly in pushing this conversation forward?
Yeah, I think you know, the idea of, I mean, we've dressed so many different types of people, everyone, all such fabulous, amazing people. And, you know, I think early in my career, I think that also helped, you know, people understand that we can, you know, have clothes for all these different types of women, all these different types of, yeah, people in general, men. Um, you know, and I think just early on, I was like, well, you know, getting a call, you know, oh, we want you to dress Oprah for the first time. And I'm like, are we saying no to Oprah because she's a curvy woman? Like, that wouldn't make sense to me. So I think that was kind of that was just how I approached it. I was just excited to get an opportunity, and, you know, and we still get excited. I think, you know, I still think that's a big part of what I love about fashion. So if you take that away, then some days aren't as exciting as the others.
And what kind of opportunity does that represent to just get your ideas and get your point of view in front of the general public that might not be there for luxury fashion otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, any kind of prominent person that you dress or work with, I mean, it really is just kind of a walking representation of your work. You know, it's a way of advertising what you do or what you can do. And obviously, a lot of it's very fantasy evening because it's very red carpet driven. But sometimes it can just be, you know, a beautiful suit on the fabulous Michelle Obama, you know, things like that. And that has really changed our business because I think then people see themselves in the clothes that way, you know. Um, and each kind of maybe actress or musician or political person, they have their own fan base. You know, sometimes people forget that everybody has their kind of niche in their world. Um, and but there is enough, I think, you know, for everyone to be inspired. And so I think that's also just what's still fun about the business of fashion. For me, I still love that. I never know who's going to call. I never know what they're going to want. It's still kind of exciting.
Is there an extra fun or an extra pleasure in getting to dress people that have maybe previously been overlooked by fashion and luxury?
Oh yeah, I mean, it always feels great to make some, you know, kind of the underdog always look really fabulous or look amazing, incredible. Um, it's my favorite thing to do, probably because I think I'm really good at I'm good at making people look great. So I think that's my job though. So I think I mean, that's kind of the only job of a brand or fashion designer, is to kind of like, we're creating, you know, art that people live their lives in. So it's like you have to kind of, I think, do a good job at it.
Mhm, mhm. You also design gender fluid clothing. Have you seen an uptick in demand for that?
You know, I think there's a big opportunity here to definitely change and grow. I think the idea is more about that maybe clothing will be a bit genderless at some point in some way. I don't think it'll ever be completely a genderless world. Unfortunately, we will never have that. We're too divided place, but I do think it's a big change. I think people want to wear what they want to wear. And at the end of the day, really, there are no rules, there are no laws. The last that I checked. So I think if someone wants to wear a dress, and whoever that person is, they should be able to wear a dress. I always thought that that was kind of interesting, because there's no higher up telling us we can't wear something or be something. So I think that's what's great about our culture. That's what we love about it. We want to be who we want to be.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Do you think that there's still a stigma attached to this type of fashion, or is that sort of evolving?
I mean, it's evolving, but there will be a stigma forever for some, probably just because there will always be people that don't understand, and people are afraid of what they don't understand. So I think that will always be there. But I think that's okay. Some days I kind of feel like it's okay. It needs to be obviously more, such more the norm and more prominent. But then I think if we're all the same and all agreeing on everything, then maybe it doesn't feel that we're actually accomplishing something sometimes. I don't know. So that's how I approach it two different ways some days. And it's hard to figure out what's the right answer. But I'm excited that it definitely is evolving for sure.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. When other designers get asked questions about designing for diverse bodies, whether that is size-wise or gender-wise, some of the reasons why they maybe hesitate to do it that come up are often that there are technical challenges in creating clothes for a bigger array of bodies. Are there technical challenges? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, of course. There's but that's, really kind of with any project. That's like if you're I don't know, a car brand and you want to build the biggest, newest, best model. I mean, it's all the same. It's how you approach it. So I think, of course, definitely like all different bodies are different shapes and sizes. And, the bigger the dress, or the pattern is, the size, the fabrication, there's more. It's sometimes can be a bit more expensive. I mean, there's all the things. But I really feel like that's with any product that ranges in a size. So but you have to set out to be prepared for that. And any designer that doesn't really know that or isn't really interested in that, it's kind of just, I don't think it's kind of an excuse, but a strange excuse, because of course that's the process. Yeah.
Right. Shifting gears a little bit, sustainability is also a big deal for you. And sustainability is a topic that the fashion industry gets hammered on a little bit. What are you and your company doing to make an effort to make things more sustainable?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty fortunate that we still have a pretty small brand for what we do. Small carbon footprint, small studio. It's a small team. We don't really, my actual Christian Siriano brand, we're not in the mass production of clothing. We're not working directly with dye houses, any of those things. So that's been, and I really love that. I think it's super important. I think we're in a really hard place right now, because the world of fast fashion and the world of luxury, the hard part of it is that obviously fast fashion was created because of of kind of like the economics of our world. There's a big generation and a big generation coming up that really doesn't spend money on clothes. So how do you get it to them? What's the process of that? So we're at a pretty hard place to try to figure out, do we need 100,000 units of one sweater? And if they're selling, okay, I understand. But if they're not, where do they go? What's happening? What's the process of making them? So I think that's now what we have to figure out, because I do think there's still a demand for a large consumer, but we have to figure out a way to make it a bit more ethical. It's just a challenge. And I think that's going to go down to literally like every single element. What is the button made out of? How does this become a pink color? we can't, I think all of those things. Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, you Speaking of sort of like thinking outside of the box and finding new ways to do things, you and your company um, made millions of masks during the pandemic. You were one of the first companies to step up when New York State asked people to start making masks. Um, what was that experience like? And do you think that that sense of civil duty is present in other areas of your company in the normal course of business?
Yeah, it's something I kind of fell into. I think I never set out to be, like a political designer necessarily, but it's kind of just keeps kind of falling into place. And I think, it's one of those things that you can't really plan for. You could never show to an investor, this is what we're doing, this is going to how the business will change. They would never understand in a way, because it was never a goal. And especially the mask, that whole project, and I call it a project because it became one. And but in the beginning it was a very reactionary idea that turned into something bigger and grander, and we feel super proud of what we did. But first when you react to something and then it's kind of like, oh, you have to hold up your end of the bargain, I think, or you have to hold up, you wouldn't want to let someone down. So I guess that's always how I approach it. That's what dressing, the underdog, or, working for a brand that maybe not everybody wants, that you wouldn't expect to work with. All of those things, I think, are actually just a bit more important to me now, because I think they leave behind something greater than just fabulous clothes. Maybe they leave behind a bit more of a purpose. So I think if I was out of business tomorrow because of a pandemic, I would feel really good about what we did. That's how I approach it now.
Great, great. Well, I think our time is out, but Christian Siriano, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Yeah, thank you so much. So appreciate it.